The four members standing at the extreme end of the labyrinth are Benimaru, Diablo, Zijin, and Dino. At Benimaru's suggestion, they were about to set off a huge firework. The reason there were only four of them was that the others did not have space-time manipulation, which allows them to act in the future. Zijin, having been entrusted with the power by Zolanis, had evolved space-time manipulation to become space-time domination. Diablo told Michael that he was going to be the one who would be in charge. Diablo had already obtained the power of space-time domination, because he was disappointed that he had fallen behind Michael in time stop. Benimaru, too, had been training under Diablo's tutelage and in a very short period of time, had developed space-time manipulation into spatial domination. Since even Benimaru had only just learned to handle it, it was no wonder that others could not handle it. Even Pico and Gracia had only spatial domination, making it difficult for them to maintain their existence in the subspace. The space ahead was that dangerous. Benimaru and his team tried to challenge the difficult task, but before that, they did not forget to restore the functionality of the labyrinth. You did a good job, you guys. I believed in you. This is proof that they are back in the labyrinth, and even if they die here, they are assured that the resurrection bracelet will bring them back to life, so everyone's faces are filled with relief. However, even Ramrus's labyrinth law does not apply to those who will be engaged in the mission that is about to begin. So, are you really going to do it? Ramrus seems to be saying, why don't you just leave it as it is? After all, what Benimaru and his group were going to do now was to attack the discarded 30 levels with all their might. Benimaru had explained the plan to them via telepathy net, but he did not seem to be enthusiastic about it. Benimaru and Dino and others seemed to be determined not to allow Vega's revival. The evil dragon spawn that Mai took with her is still there, but that's about it. What they were going to do now was just a distraction. It is because of this understanding that Ramrus is against it. Even so, she understands the feelings of Dino and the others, so she will not stop them. From the evacuation site that is adjacent to the other world, they could see the discarded 30-level part of the building. If they just leave them there, they will be swallowed up and blown away by the other world. In the subspace, there is always a phase fluctuation. It is not predictable, and if they are caught in it, it is impossible to predict what kind of other dimensional space they will be transported to. Even the flow of time is distorted in this other world, so that even if you had spatial domination, it would not be realistic to return to the same point from where you were jumped. Belgrand achieved it, but it was an exception by a combination of coincidence and miracle. No matter how spiritual life forms may be, survival in such a place is hopeless. Knowing this, Ramrus seriously advises them. Good thing. You must protect yourself with the barrier and keep your lifeline. Otherwise, if you are swallowed by subspace, you don't know where you will jump to, do you? Dino nodded strongly to Ramrus's warning. In fact, Benimaru, Diablo, and Zijin are connected to the soul corridor via Rimuru. Of the four members who are going to make a mission, Dino is the only one who does not have a firm connection with the others. Well, that's it. I and Pico will support you, don't worry. Well, I was shocked that we didn't have a bond. Don't worry about it. I don't care. We're friends and we trust each other. It's weird that there are things like Soul Corridor that don't make sense. Dino thought that he was right, but he was feeling a little sad. Anyway, it was necessary to tighten up from this point on. In the subspace, there was no foothold, so they had to rely on their lifelines. As Ramrus said, it was a very dangerous act. Nevertheless, Dino was unusually motivated. If he had to, he would finish his work as soon as possible. Dino was the first to jump out into the subspace. Zijin arrives at Dino's side. Benimaru was the most inexperienced, so he was still in a position close to the safe zone. Diablo is at the far end, the most dangerous position, before he knows it. From Dino's point of view, the arrangement looks like an equilateral triangle. From the other's point of view, it was a tetrahedron with the four of them at the top. Now, the preparations were complete. Ramrus suggested that they do it anyway, to which Diablo agreed, saying, Kufifufu, that's interesting. Zijin silently agreed, and Benimaru, who had proposed the ritual, and Dino, who followed him, agreed later. In fact, the ritual itself was as dangerous as the place itself. Diablo aside, Zijin and Benimaru. Great, the amount of magicule is growing again. Zijin having witnessed the earlier battle, he doesn't want to understand, but he do. But before he knew it, even Benimaru had become as strong as the real Dino. He wondered what was going on, but he didn't have the energy to rush in. Dino decided to concentrate on the mission. Be careful. Came the anxious thought of Ramrus. Once it is confirmed that everyone is in position, it's time to get to work. 2 people, connect the dots in 1 dimension. 3 people, 2 dimensions drawing a plane. If there are 4 people, it is 3 dimensions forming a space. Each person stood at the top of the tetrahedron with the target in the center. In other words, what they are about to do now is to strike each person with his or her own secrets toward the center of the tetrahedron, which has been completed to enclose the 30 levels of the discarded labyrinth. It will be far more than a stack magic circle, a spatial magic circle will be formed. It's going to be unimaginably powerful. Dino gulped down his spit. The more he thought about it, the more he realized how crazy it sounded. Dino was so enthusiastic that he got involved in this story, but when he cooled down before the actual performance, he began to think, this is a bad idea. However, the other 3 members except Dino were surprisingly enthusiastic. Kufufufu, it's been a while since I've given it my all. Yes. I'll take this opportunity to know my limits. Yes, you're right. My body is in shambles, but for some reason, I think I can do it. Hearing this conversation on telepathy net, Dino thought. First of all, Diablo. Don't you dare. Second, Zijin. You have no limits. Then, Benimaru. If your body is in such bad shape, why did you make this proposal? They must be crazy. Dino wanted to shout with all his might. But it was too late to say anything. He thought it would be useless, and if he was not good at it, it would only make the atmosphere worse. Dino is a surprisingly considerate man. So, the countdown began, with Diablo and the other executives of Tempest, making them feel like they're not good enough for them. You know what to do, don't you, Dino? We'll adjust our timing accordingly, said Diablo. Benimaru and Zijin had no objection. They were confident that the 3 of them could perfectly synchronize their timing, but it would be too much to ask Dino to do so. Therefore, as soon as Dino released his technique, the 3 of them followed him. Dino did not complain about this. In fact, he was relieved that he was not asked to do something so reckless as to match the timing on the spot with such a difficult ritual technique. I'll give it my all. Dino responded, his spears sharpening. At that moment, Dino's 6 pairs of 12 black and white wings shined. Dino's twin swords, the golden sword Excalibur and the dark silver sword Kalivron, converged with immense power. Fallen Crusade. The white light blade and the black shadow blade intersect beautifully at the center of the tetrahedron, leaving an afterglow. And at that very moment, the flowers in full bloom burst into bloom at the same time. Prominence acceleration. End of the world requiem. Devastator storm. Benimaru's prominence acceleration is the strongest and most powerful of all. Diablo's end of world requiem is the ultimate illusionary elemental catastrophe magic, which reproduces the collapse of the world and causes localized destruction. It is a combination of skill, art, and magic, and needless to say, it was Diablo's original and the most powerful and worst secret. And Zijin's Devastator Storm, which was also Zijin's most powerful spell, has been transformed into Dimension Storm by incorporating the power entrusted to it by Zelanis, and has become even vicious. Each of them demonstrated their maximum power. The numerous superb techniques that were unleashed every inch of the way reached the center of the tetrahedron at exactly the right moment, just as if they were covered by the techniques unleashed by Dino. In the labyrinthine waste section sitting there, a colorless polar light bloomed, beautifully coloring the subspace. It was beautiful and worthy of being presented. However, the hidden power of the light was the greatest since the creation of the universe, and it produced a destructive force of utter disaster. The inside of the tetrahedron, which was constructed so as not to miss its power, is filled with the disasters of destruction. Quartet skill. Breakdown nostalgia. The power of the 4 artists combined into one, creating the ultimate destruction never seen before. Needless to say, Dino was terrified when he experienced it up close. I thought it was too dangerous to try it on a spur-of-the-moment basis. Dino later said. It was the moment when a saga was born. The control room was aware of this situation. Everyone who witnessed this scene is silent. The raging destructive storm shows no sign of abating. It is fortunate that this was a subspace. If this had been in the labyrinth, it was unimaginable how many layers of people would have been involved. Are you in trouble? Ramrus said, revealing her true feelings. The discarded 30 layers at the center of the destruction disappeared in an instant when it was touched by the energy of destruction. If such a heinous technique were used on the ground, the planet would disappear and the solar system would be swallowed up. Indeed, it is a destructive power that completely surpasses even the power of Valgrand. The 4 top-ranked players in this world, the Quartet skill, produced unimaginable results through synergistic effects. In such a silent control room, there were some people who came back to the room, talking happily with each other. They were Diablo and Benimaru. Well, it was a very enjoyable experience. Yes, it was. My body was screaming, but when it came time to do it, I felt more full of energy than ever before. I'd like to do it again, but I'm afraid I won't have the chance anytime soon. Kufufufu. Carrera said something like, it's so much fun to break through the hierarchy, and I finally understand why she said that. That's true. Testing the limits of one's strength is an experience rarely experienced. Finally, Zijin joins in, and the atmosphere seems to be quite lively. Ramos couldn't stop her body from shaking, a far cry from the temperature in the control room. Her anxiety had turned into anger. Ramos was flapping around the room, declaring absolute prohibition to Benimaru and the others who came back to the room. In the midst of all this, Dino, who was so tired that he didn't want to do anything anymore. Pico and Gracia were also sitting on the parlor sofa, looking as if it was a matter of course. Shuna gently offered tea and sweets to them. Thank you for your hard work. It is a man's nature to be charmed by a smiling face saying so. Dino, as usual, felt that his hard work had been worthwhile and his efforts were rewarded. Unlike Benimaru and the others, Dino had fought only by himself. Therefore, Dino was proudly lying on the couch as if this was his reward. He relaxed gracefully and asked Shuna for another cup of tea. By doing so, Dino is relieving his fatigue. Benimaru complained about Dino's naturalness to him. Hey, why are you so relaxed? No, because, my work is finished, right? Dino answered in a very light-hearted manner. Then why don't you go back to your house? Hearing this, Dino looked at Benimaru with a puzzled look on his face. What? Well, after the battle, we can no longer say Tomo when we write strong enemy, right? If that's the case, then there's no other place for us to live, right? Dino said briskly. It was so refreshing to see that they were thinking only of their own convenience. He even winked at him lightly, which made Benimaru's irritation reach its peak. So, he was saying back to him in a harsh tone. That's not the point. You guys were enemies just a little while ago, weren't you? Dino is a demon lord, so it was rude to talk like that, but Pico and Gracia didn't complain. They don't respect Dino that much. Dino himself doesn't seem to be bothered by it either, and he simply lets it slide and gets Ramos involved. What? We already made up. Right, Ramos. Huh? Well, yeah. If you want to work again, I'm willing to hire you. Ramos's mood had returned. Remembering how she and Dino had made up, she was smiling.